Hello and welcome back to another episode of Injustice For All MMA. My name is David, and this episode is for UFC 310, Pantoja V Asakura. This wouldn't be an episode if it weren't 2 to 3 weeks late, as we have been ridiculously busy, and by we I mean me. This fight, surprisingly, wasn't spoiled for me. So I got to watch this with how do I put this? Fresh eyes, kinda. Definitely fresh eyes, and fresh ears. So I got into this. I finally finished the card, and this was a really good pay-per-view from start to finish. This was a great pay-per-view, and it's all because there's a lot of finishes, a lot of cool moments, and the thing that really sticks out to me in this entire pay-per-view is that there's these small little narratives. Obviously, the commentary crew loves to just throw narratives, whether you like them or not. They just do that. But in between each fight, they throw narratives. Now, this has always been a thing that has pissed me off. This is my main reason for complaining all the time on this thing, is that commentator will say something, and while it doesn't affect the judges' scorecards, there's a little part in the back of my head that just gets annoyed because I feel as though sometimes, not that it affects the judges' scorecards, what I'm mostly screaming at is that I feel as though that narrative is being shared by the judges, thus affecting the scorecard. If you get what I'm saying is when I hear the commentary say something to the effect of, that guy's doing X, Y, and Z, therefore he's winning the fight. I'm not saying that he can be heard by a judge or anything like that. I'm just saying there's a small part of me that feels like a judge has that same sentiment, and that's what turns me into a rage. And while we can go through all the finishes and all the really great performances tonight, or on this pay-per-view, I'm going to talk about, obviously, the honorable mentions, because that's what's really important. But I'm going to go through some pockets of the card that certain narratives just didn't fit with me. It just didn't fit with me. I don't know what it is. It just didn't fit with me. And I'm going to whine about it for however long it takes me. So let's start off with this. I'm not going to go through finishes, right? Nzechukwu won by TKO. Hooper won by submission. Beautiful, amazing. Chiesa won by submission. Let's start off with Durden versus Van. Okay, I had this 30-26 for Van. 10-9 in the first, 10-9 in the third, 10-8 in the second. I mean, that's the only round you can really, maybe the third round, but not really. Second round is a clear 10-8. This fight was incredible, and this is where it starts. This is where we start to get a little. Is where I can sense narratives being made, and I don't know if I can find a better word than narrative. More like just a lack of explaining by either Anik or Joe or Cormier. When they explain stuff, they don't add context to it. And the biggest thing is takedowns. The commentary crew, and this isn't just this commentary crew, but every commentary crew, is very selective when they want to say, this guy needs to be active. That used to be a thing on a lot of the fight nights, where if a guy was winning by taking someone down, they would cry and whine, and I would cry with them on, hey, this person needs to be more active. That way this victory comes off a lot more cleaner and a lot more entertaining. But then it turned into a weird thing where when a fighter that we either like or is liked does that thing, that sentiment starts to decrease. A good example is Jailton Almeida, where Almeida just tore through his first, 2 opponents. And I remember watching those fights thinking, you know what? This guy sucks. This guy's very inactive on the ground, and he's just bulldozing through these people. One, because he's not really in a weight class, and also because these guys are like below him on the ground. And so I thought to myself, man, he's not really active down here. This is a thing. That was in the first fight. In the second fight, same thing. In the third fight, I'm like, no, this is a thing, and this is going to get caught up. And eventually he got caught up, and eventually got noticed. And it specifically got noticed when he fought against Derek Lewis. That was when everyone noticed. But at the time, I was saying to myself, no, this guy's not complete yet. Anyways, I'm going off into a tangent. And the same thing would apply to Oliveira in his last fight, where he was very inactive on the ground. Very inactive, to the point where no one even mentioned it. No one in commentary mentioned it. But let's go back to this point. The narrative starts in round 1 of this fight, where Durden gets 2 takedowns. And when he has these 2 takedowns, it would be an understatement to say that he is inactive. He is so inactive. In fact, it reminded me of early Cody Durden. I remember when, I can't remember whether it was his first fight or his second fight. It was one of the fights in the Apex where he took down his opponent and he just laid on them for 3 rounds. And I told myself, this guy fucking stinks. And then he came out the next fight and his hands were flying. And I'm like, wow, okay, he made a great improvement. And then his hands kept flying. And I was like, you know what? I like Cody Durden. He totally changed my perception on him, because when he took people down, he was either working, or when he got back on his feet, he was striking. That didn't happen this time. He had 2 takedowns, and he proceeded to do nothing with these takedowns, to the point where the time was kind of clicking on the clock. And I told myself, before the 2 takedowns happened, Durden took him down twice, and in those takedowns, the clock was going down. So I'm scoring this in my head, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, the clock is getting down to a minute, and Durden has 2 takedowns. Not much has happened on the feet, but Van is really, really active. And I'm thinking to myself, if he keeps being this active while he's on the ground, I might score this for Van. That's what was inkling in my head. That was in the background of my head. Thankfully, Van gets out of it and outstrikes him. He outstrikes him by about 17 plus strikes in total in this round. And he outstrikes him he's landing some really good shots toward the end, Van is, of this first round. And I'm thinking to myself, this round better go to Van. And we'll check in a second, because I still haven't seen it. You go to the second round, and Van outstrikes Durden by he outstrikes him by 50 plus strikes. I have 57 on my marker. Possible 10-8. I gave it a 10-8. When I saw him go into the 40s while I was counting, I was thinking to myself, this is O'Malley Munoz levels. And I don't remember how far he outstruck him in the first or the second, but it was on that sort of level. And I was thinking to myself, this is a 10-8. The moment it touched 40, because I remember I've counted some strikes where people were outstruck by 30 plus strikes, and I didn't give a 10-8. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. Once it got into the 40s, I was already in this is a 10-8 round. This is absolutely a 10-8 round. You go to the third round, where Van outstrikes Durden by about 40 plus strikes, 47 on my counter. Possible 10-8. I didn't give it a 10-8 because Durden was hitting back. He landed some really good shots on Van as well. That's why I didn't give it a 10-8, but you can argue a 10-8 in this last round. You go to the judges' scorecards, and look at me, I'm not prepared. This is kind of gung-ho. You can see how unprepared I am today. Yep, you can just see how unprepared I am. Hold the phone. Hold the phone. And you can see, and this is what I'm talking about. You go to the judges' scorecards, and this is what just had me lost. And sometimes I just get so mad. I mean, there's a lot of things that I was mad about this card. It was a great card, but I was just mad at the narratives and the judging. But let's shit on the judging real quick. So Ron McCarthy has a 30-27. The fact that there's no 10-8 here. I know I said possible 10-8, but there should be a 10-8 in the one of the two rounds. One of the last two rounds. There isn't. I can't say anything. 30-27 to Van on Ron McCarthy's scorecard. Eric Sloan has a 30-26. He gives the last round a 10-8. If you're going to give a 10-8, it should be in the second, but he gave it in the last one. That's whatever. Mike Bell gives the last two rounds to Van, gives the first round to Durden, and this is the bullshit that I'm talking about. On what planet are you giving Van the first round? Durden takes him down twice, proceeds to do nothing on the ground, gets pieced up on the feet, and even gets pieced up when he's down there. And the first round goes to Durden on Mike Bell's scorecard. Honorable mention, it's a shitty scorecard. That was my long-winded way of saying, why the fuck did Mike Bell give the first round to Cody Durden? Absolutely insane. Absolutely insane. Weidman loses by TKO in the second round. Really, I'm not mad at the stoppage is fine. I thought it should have been done earlier, but I understand why they let it go on. It's just one of those things of like, is he going to get out? Is he not going to get out of this position? And he didn't get out. Boom. You go to the next honorable mention, and that's Brown versus Battle. I'm so thankful that we got certain fights got. How do I say this? This was scored correctly. If this were a fight night, this would have been the correct scorecard. Okay, I had this 29-28 for Battle, last two rounds for Battle, first round for Brown. Ended up being a split decision. It shouldn't have been a split decision. It really shouldn't have been a split decision. I don't know who's watching this. There's a couple of fights where you're thinking, who's watching this? There's no close rounds. They're pretty fucking definitive. Okay, in that first round, it's close on the feet, but Brown gets a takedown with a little bit of ground and pound to pretty much close the round. He wins the round that way. You go to the second round where Battle outstruck Brown by about 20 plus strikes, but it's mostly clinch strikes. Now remember that it's all in the clinch. It's all in the clinch, really. You go to the third round where Battle outstrikes Brown. Brown lands a couple good shots on Battle, but most of this fight is in the clinch. Most of the strikes are in the clinch, and most of them are all by Battle. Battle just basically, I think DC mentioned it briefly where he said a large part of this fight is basically the fight that Battle had back in France, where he overpowered Juice in the clinch, and then he got to finish that way. This fight summed up is basically Talia Santos versus Aaron Blanchfield. That's pretty much this fight, but in a men's capacity. You go to the scorecards. Yeah, I think I read them right. You go to the scorecards here. If I can find the scorecards, look at me, I'm so unorganized. Anyways, you go to the scorecards here, and again, Mike Bell again, just it's not in place. It's not in place at all. He gives the first round to Brown. That's correct, and he gives the last one to Brown. How do you give the last round to Brown? Brown is being controlled on the fence pretty much the entire round. Gets outstruck in the clinch. Most of the significant strikes are in the clinch. And he gives the last round to Brown. He gives it a 29-28 to Brown. Honorable mention to Mike Bell. It's another terrible scorecard. Adelaide Bird and Ron McCarthy get this correct. 29-28. They give the last two rounds to Brian Battle. Okay. Then you go to probably the first fight that really ticked me off. It's not good when you go from split decision where you're just like, how the fuck did they score that last round for Brown, to Evloev versus Sterling. And what makes me mad about this fight, what makes me mad, what makes me mad about this fight, what makes me really bad about this fight is the fucking commentary. The commentary killed me in this fight. I was watching this and I was thinking to myself, Why are they blowing Aljamain Sterling? Now, this narrative has been popped up for a while, and if you listen to the JRE occasionally, you'll know that Joe loves to just talk about Aljamain looks great at 145. And I remember thinking to myself, even when I watched him fight Calvin Kattar, I was thinking to myself, Calvin's coming back from an ACL. He's coming back from an ACL, and they fed him a wrestler. And one of the worst things you can say on commentary is, yeah, and he was outstriking him too. Not giving context to, he's outstriking him because of his wrestling, not because he's some fancy striker. It's not as though he's Max Holloway with the striking. No. He was outstriking him because of the threat of the takedown, because he had taken him down so many times. This is some shit that I don't even have to explain. This is like common knowledge. Yet it's being parroted as Aljamain Sterling is just a yard away from a featherweight title shot. And I didn't like that narrative. I never liked that narrative. And it's not because I dislike Aljamain Sterling. It's because I just didn't like the narrative and it just didn't seem true. And I'm watching this fight. And we'll just start off with the rounds, but we're going to take a long look at this because this whole fight pissed me off. And it pissed me off because not only was Evloev getting no love, they were downplaying him winning the round based off of damage. Guys, this is insane to say. Some fights, the commentator wants to highlight damage in air quotes, which is basically just effective striking. And then some fights, they won't speak about the damage that is being occurred. Let's start off with the first round. Okay, I had this by the way, I just had this 30-27 for Evloev, close marker in the first round. You can argue the first round either way. I'll get to that in a second. You go to the first round. If I can find it. If I can find it on my screen. You go to the first round, right? You go to the first round, and Sterling has 2 takedowns. I want to make this very clear. He has 2 takedowns, and he proceeds to do nothing with it. There's no ground and pound. There's little to no ground and pound with these 2 takedowns. He's smothering Evloev. He's holding Evloev. He has him down on the 2 takedowns. And Evloev is like, I'm looking at his face, and I'm going, no, there's no way he's about to be on his back for the entire round. There's just no way on the planet. I was thinking that in my head, which I probably shouldn't be thinking. I should probably just be watching the fight. But I was like, no. I've watched too much of it. That's not Evloev. And the round's starting to continue to go, and he's just and Sterling is overwhelming him. And I'm thinking to myself, no, this can't happen. This isn't happening. And then I was proven right. Now, Sterling has 2 takedowns, and he outstrikes Evloev on the feet by, however, very few strikes, but he's outstriking him on the feet. Evloev, while he's down there, he finally reverses position and lands some really good ground and pound. That's towards the end of the round. But he also has his own takedown. But the real focus is that Sterling does not do enough when he's down there on his 2 takedown attempts, on his 2 successful takedowns. He does little to nothing down there. He outstrikes Evloev on the feet by very few. And most of the strikes come from one person. And it's all Evloev, to the point where I'm left with giving him the round. Now, you can argue that the round should go to Sterling. I think the round goes to Evloev. It's a toss-up in my opinion, hence why I put the close marker, so I'm not mad about it. You go to the second round. This is clear. Every time Sterling gets a takedown, it's talked about as though he gets a knockout. And that's just not the case. The level of excitement shouldn't be this much at all. Okay, in the second round, Sterling gets a takedown, but Evloev gets his own takedown. He also has a reversal with really good ground and pound, and Sterling is active on his back, but he's not. This is nothing to take away the round. Evloev is winning clear, and it's not being highlighted as well as Sterling getting his 2 takedowns and commentary expressing, oh, how beautiful Sterling looks at 145. The only difference with Sterling at 145 is that he's bigger. He's just slightly filled out. He's still the same fighter. And maybe less chinnier. I don't even think chinnies are. He can take more damage. I think that's the correct phrase. We go to the 3rd round, okay, where Sterling has 3 takedowns. I want to make this very clear because he gets a bunch of takedowns and proceeds to do bullshit. He proceeds to do nothing with any of these takedowns. 0. He does nothing with these takedowns. He has 3 takedowns. I mean, if this were like a fight night, if Evloev decides to do nothing. By the way, Evloev speaks amazing English, crazy. But anyways, if Evloev decides to do nothing, he loses this fight 29-28, maybe 30-27, whatever. Sterling gets 3 takedowns. Evloev continues to allow him to just take him down. And I'm thinking to myself, no way. Based off now at this point, based off of what I saw in the 2nd round, I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to reverse him. He's getting out of this. And guess what? He does. He reverses, lands loads of ground and pound. In fact, all the offense in this round is from him. He claims all the offense in this round. Reversal, loads of ground and pound. I mean, I don't even have an amount. Loads of ground and pound. And he also gets 2 did I write 1 or 2? He has 1 takedown as well in this 3rd round. He wins based off damage. I hate using that phrase because I think it's stupid and it sounds dumb. But he wins this fight. And yet, if you closed your eyes and listen to this fight, you would think that Sterling's winning off of what? Takedowns where he's doing nothing? This fight, it pissed me off in more ways than one. We go to the judges' scorecards where all 3, Ben Carlidge, Saul Diamant, and Derek Cleary all scored it the same. They all had a 29-28 for Evloev. They had the 1st round of Sterling, so there's that. We go to the next honorable mention, and that's a fight that should have gone to Volkov. It should have gone to Volkov, and it didn't. It sadly did not go to Volkov. It's very sad that it didn't go to Volkov. I had this 29-28 for Volkov. Last 2 rounds to Volkov. 1st round for Ciryl Gane. Close marker on the 2nd round. After the 2nd round, I knew Volkov. I believed Volkov won, so I wrote it down. And then I told myself that round was close. And when I was watching it, and I was waiting for Bruce to come out, and it took him an extra minute to come out, I was like, fuck. This is a split decision. You just know when it takes Bruce an extra minute to come into the cage, it's a split decision. And when he paused in a way when he said it, then I was like, oh, it's going to Gane. It's going to Ciryl Gane. And it's not a good optic, especially when this is hilarious. It's not a good optic when the guy you think wins the last round, and now, and you know, it's really not fair because this is actually a close fight. It's just that optic at the end of the round is not good. Him beating him in that last round, Ciryl Gane just laying on his back. It's not a good visual. It's not good. And I know that I know for sure that Adelaide Bird and Junichiro Kamijo, just terrible scorecards, in my opinion, were sweating it. I know they were sweating. They were like, fuck. we're about to get shat on, dude. But let's go through it. 29-28. Last 2 rounds for Volkov. I had it. Close marker in the 2nd round. Okay, you go to the 1st round. You go to the first round, and Volkov had 2 takedowns. He had 2 takedowns. And he outstruck Cyril Gane on the feet by about 2+ strikes. He didn't outstrike him by much on the feet. But Cyril Gane gets a takedown of his own, and he has a deep submission attempt to close the round. The round belongs to Cyril Gane just based off of the submission. The submission attempt alone wins him this first round. So there you have it on that. You go to the second round, where after the second round, I was left going, that round was close. We'll see what they score it. Gane has a takedown, but Volkov, the takedown's pretty quick. He doesn't really do anything with the takedown. He just has it, and then he gets out, and then Volkov outstrikes Gane by about 3 strikes. Again, I think I've mentioned this like 70 times. This round reminds me of Pereira versus Blachowicz, where Blachowicz gets a takedown, Pereira outstrikes him by a little bit. You can argue it for either person, but sometimes but what's funny about this is that in this circumstance, it went the other way. Because most of the times you see the guy got a takedown, but he got outstruck by a little bit, it goes to the striker. It really does go to the striker. Pereira, I can't think of the other examples at the moment. But in this case, especially, not because the round ended in a takedown. Gane gets a takedown, but Volkov gets back up and then continues to outstrike him. And also, he's outstriking him pretty steadily in this entire round. I'm surprised. And it's not as though they were close on strikes and then it ends in a takedown. He gets a takedown somewhere close to the end of the round, kind of middle to the end of the round. And then, again, like I said, Volkov gets back up and outstrikes him. I'm very surprised that they scored this for this round for Gane, but they did. The last round doesn't help. It doesn't help the optics of this whole thing, because Volkov then gets a takedown pretty quickly and lands ground and pound. Now, the ground and pound is awkward. It's to the butt. It's to the thigh. And that's just because they're in this weird position. But he's on top of him for 3+ minutes, and he's the only one hitting him. So, what do you want from it? And then you just go straight to the scorecards. And like I said, Adelaide, Bergenisher, Camigio, I can't even say honorable mention. The second round is just so close. I can't be mad at it, but I wouldn't score it this way. They both have it 29-28 for Cyril Gane, and Eric Cologne, who I think has the correct scorecard, gives it to Alexander Volkov. He gives the last 2 rounds to Volkov. Yeah, it sucks. It really does suck. Let me skip back up. Reyes versus Smith. I was watching Reyes versus Smith with a friend, and she was saying, "Why is he crying?" And I was like, and this, I wasn't listening to the commentary yet, but I was just explaining to her that, a lot of people cry. One of my favorite fighters, he cries, right? He cries before he comes to Sarah. What's his name? Charles Oliveira. He comes to the ring and he's crying, right? And she's just like, I know, but he's fucking bawling his eyes. Anyways, she knows he was crying. I then listened to the commentary where they said his best friend died. I'm like, damn, this is not good. This is not good. Anyways, it didn't end up being good. He loses the first round, Smith does, and then he loses by TKO. He loses kind of like in the same fashion that he lost against Glover Teixeira. That gets mentioned in commentary. That was a good callback. It was a good callback, but a bad callback because it's just the circumstances of the fight. Real bad. Real bad. It sucked. It's not a good. It wasn't a feel good thing. He retires, but then he does the classic MMA retirement. This is actually different from the classic MMA retirement because most guys retire offline. They kind of retire off the ring, and then they come back. Like Masvidal is coming back, right? Allegedly, I don't know. Donald Cerrone's coming back. Most of those guys retire outside of the ring, or some people retire in the ring, and then they come back a couple years later. It's a hard visual. It's hard not to believe that this is his last fight because he's crying. It's just he's done. Is what it looks like. I believe he's done. Same with Miocic. I mean, Miocic was so secure in that he was gone. He was just like, yeah, I'm done. It's a wrap. So it was sad. It was sad, and it's, it is what it is. Yeah, that's it. I feel really bad for Volkov. Is my point. I feel really bad. I feel like he should have won this. That whole visual, the visuals at the end were just crazy. It was pretty much. I'm thinking he won. He didn't fucking win. They give it to Cyril Gane. He runs out of the. I thought he was gonna go full villain mode, but that dude's just too nice. If we had like a list of people who are the nicest people in MMA, it's Cyril Gane. He's one of them for sure. He hears that he won, and he's like, nah, we gotta go. I'm out of here. I wish he kept walking. That would have been like a lot more drama filled, but no, he gets to the bottom of the cage and they bring him back in, and he's like, no, I'm not happy with my performance, and it's bad performance, and I don't know, but that's my French accent. So, not a good performance by Cyril Gane. He's disappointed. Just terrible. I think I hate also. Anik. I like Anik, but I also hate Anik. I think that I hated was Anik telling us that Dana went up to him. What is that supposed to do? Someone tell me what's that supposed to do? Because Dana going up to Volkov, is that him? Because listen, from my understanding, he doesn't control the rankings, and you can't give someone a title shot that the judges. How do I? You can't give someone. You can't give someone a favorable matchup now, or an ascending matchup after losing on the scorecards, whether it be unjust or justly. You just can't, because I've never seen that happen. I've just never seen that happen. I don't think they're going to start now, and I don't even think they can. I don't know if this is legal or not. I don't know if they can legally do that. My point is that Dana going up to Volkov and saying, "Hey man, you won that fight." What does that do for Volkov? Volkov has been on a streak. A little mini streak here, and really, his next fight would be fighting for the title, or at least another shitty title eliminator. And now that gets thrown away. It gets thrown away because either there's two. If Volkov would have won on the scorecards, his next matchup would have been Aspinall if Jones doesn't fight him, right? Vacate and then Volkov versus Aspinall, or they would go one more title eliminator, which also doesn't make sense. This title eliminator doesn't make sense, but it would be Blades versus Volkov, which that title eliminator makes no sense. So in my head, right? In my head, it would be, if Volkov would have won this fight, it would have been Volkov versus Aspinall or Jones. That. Instead, now, if you're the UFC and you think he won, you don't give it. You can't give him those anymore. Like, his next fight's probably Jailton or some shit, or Derek Lewis again. Like, you want to talk about logjam? I remember as soon as this decision got made, I was like, this division is now more logjam than ever. It's more logjam. So now with Cyril, who do you put him up against? Does he fight Blades next? I'm assuming that's the matchup, right? That's the matchup, but it's no longer a title eliminator because Blades just fought for an interim, so he won't be fighting for a title anytime soon. And he's going to fight, let's say he fights Ciryl Gane. If he beats Ciryl Gane, then we still need him to fight one more time before he fights for a title again. Then Ciryl Gane, if he beats Blades, make it make sense. If he beats Blades, do you give him another title shot? That doesn't make sense either. We're log jammed. We're log jammed, and that'll lead us up to Pantoja versus. I'll just skip to that one, and then I'll go to Rakhmonov versus Garry. But Pantoja wins by submission in the second round. He made Asakura look like a nobody, really, just a guy who just throws flying knees every 4 seconds. And all the Japanese Twitter stands are in shambles now, because I remember when this fight got announced, it was, who the fuck is that guy? Obviously, we didn't know, but therefore the fair point would have been Asakura should have. No one has gotten a title shot off the rip. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm sure maybe someone in the dark ages did, but I'm talking about like currently. At least with Chandler had to beat Hooker, who was on a run, who was literally on a run for the title. So, coming off a loss. So we can't use Chandler. No one's come in off of, even Yuri, who had a title in a previous promotion. He had to fight 2 opponents before getting a title shot. They gave Asakura a chance and tried to throw it past us like, hey, this guy was a former champion. This guy's a former champion. No, he should have fought at least one time. And then did the Chandler where they just give him the title shot. They should have given him Schnell. They should have given him like fucking Tim Elliott. They should have given him, maybe not Tim Elliott. They should. I need a better opponent. They should have given him maybe Royval or so. They should have thrown him to a person in the UFC flyweight division and then sold us this fight, but instead they didn't. And now we're mega log jam. You thought we were log jam before? We're so log jammed that the next title fight should be Demetrius Johnson, Mighty Mouse versus Pantoja. That's the only thing you can say, because Pantoja has now beaten Moreno twice. I know people say 3 times, but it's twice. He's beaten him twice. He's beaten Royval twice. We don't want to see that fight again. I mean, we can see the fight again, but the UFC won't put that fight again. There's no one else. Tatsuro Taira, he lost. So we're so log jammed at this point that there's nothing to do. We're log jammed. We're so log jammed that if I'm the UFC, just go pay Demetrius to come back. And what's the worst that can happen? Demetrius wins and then retires again? Cool. Demetrius wins and then retired again, and then the next fight can be Pantoja versus Royval or some shit. At least give us that. We're so fucking logged jam. And then we're gonna go to the most. We'll move on. Most interesting fight on the card from a narrative standpoint. Rakhmonov versus Garry. I had this 48-47 for Rakhmonov. First 2 rounds for Rakhmonov. 3rd round for Garry. 4th round for Rakhmonov. 5th round for Garry. Close marker on the 2nd round. I put that there for objective reasons. I don't think the first round should go to Garry. I don't think you can argue the first round for Garry. I just put it there because if you were to make a case for Garry, the 2nd round would be based off of the optics of the round. We'll get through it in a second, but you go to the first round. It's close on strikes with the edge to Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov is barely outstriking him, but he's not really outstriking. It's close on strikes. And then it proceeds to be a clinch fest where Rakhmonov controls Garry on the fence for 3 minutes. And most of the strikes were in the clinch, and they were mostly from Rakhmonov. So there you have it. That's pretty clear. You go to the 2nd round where it's practically even on the feet. It's even on the feet. It's even in the clinch. But Rakhmonov is controlling him. This is why we have the scoring criteria. Rakhmonov is controlling him pretty much on the fence. I put a close marker because here's the thing. They're even on strikes. This isn't like the first round where they're close on the feet, but in the clinch, Rakhmonov is obviously doing most of the work. In this second round, they're even on the feet, and when they get to the clinch, they're both being very active. The only difference is that Rakhmonov is the one who's on top of him, controlling him. I put a close marker in case anyone wants to highlight the strikes or whatever, but this round goes to Rakhmonov as well. You go to the third round where Garry finally gets it going. He's outstriking Rakhmonov. Rakhmonov lands a couple heavy strikes here and there, but he's not winning this round. Rakhmonov is losing this round. And this is the part where I start thinking to myself, Rakhmonov looks different. And you can maybe say, okay, he's fighting Garry. He trained for Belal. But no, my mind continues to keep racing. You go to the fourth round where Garry's outstriking Rakhmonov. He's outstriking him on the feet. See, this is where the fight kind of turns. Because if he didn't get taken down, we might see a victory for Garry. Garry's outstriking Rakhmonov on the feet by about 6 strikes, but Rakhmonov gets 2 takedowns, and he lands some ground and pound. Garry was active on the bottom. If you want to be cute and be not an upright citizen, you would argue the fourth round for Garry, but that's just a bad person. Rakhmonov gets 2 takedowns with some ground and pound. Garry's active on the bottom. You go to the fifth round where this round convinced me that I just don't think Rakhmonov is better than Belal. This fight made me rethink that Rakhmonov is going to beat Belal Muhammad. I think Belal Muhammad is going to win. And based off this fifth round, Garry has a takedown. He also has a little bit of ground and pound here and there. And he has a submission attempt. And he outstrikes Rakhmonov on the feet as well. He outstrikes him pretty much everywhere. But the submission wasn't in. I mean, it was in. It just was. He got out of it. And there you have it. There you have it. You go to the judges' scorecards. And all their scorecards reflect mine. Mike Bell, Chris Lee, and Ron McCarthy. Boom. There you have it. Interesting card. Interesting narratives. Pretty decent pay-per-view. Thank you all for listening, and God bless.